자, 4강 두 번째 경기 1세트 서렌더 선수와 프로즈 윈터로 선수 양 선수의 첫 번째 세트입니다.
Hello everybody and welcome to the last match here of the top 4 between FrozenWinter and Surrender. Surrender on the top going to be getting us started off with his Elnuk Ezreal deck, and on the bottom we have FrozenWinter back on his Fiora Garen Shadow Isle. As previously mentioned, no Rekindler going to be coming out of this list, as that Mist's Call and the Harrowing are banned from the remainder of this tournament due to a bugged interaction. Going to be seeing how this matchup gets started off. Based on the opening hand of FrozenWinter, I'm going to go ahead and say this is in the favor of Surrender, as one unit being kept alive is a shaky win condition at best against these Elnuk Ezreal decks. Of course, Demacia historically having a bit of problems with that troop of Elnuks that we do see in Surrender's opening hand. This is not the early board that you generally see out of these Demacia decks. Going to be a Fiora, Vanguard, Bannerman, and Garen, along with a slew of barrier spells on the side of FrozenWinter. The barrier spells, of course, protecting the unit, but not stopping the Ezreal evolution from ticking up. He's going to start off with an Ice Veil Archer onto this Fiora. Of course, not going to have the mana to riposte to swing at that one. Is just going to pass the turn. Now we see Surrender already very close to this Elnuk turn with no pressure coming down yet from FrozenWinter. A couple turns off this Garen still. The Bull Elnuk into the troop of Elnuk could be the play here for Surrender. Does still have the 3 spell mana banked. Might not want to clog up his hand with those Chump Wumps. Doesn't have any discard effects just yet to take advantage of the Shrooms. No Rummage or anything like that. Is going to elect to get this down though, not valuing the 1 health on the Bull Elnuk. And FrozenWinter hovering this Vanguard Bannerman, the only unit he could play this turn. You do feel like you have to build up a board in these early turns before these single combat spells. Surrender looking relatively happy with that one. Not super concerned by 2 4/4s. However, this Prismatic Barrier could prove problematic for FrozenWinter actually, as it will just get baited out into a Mystic Shot. And if he goes for a greedy block with this Fiora trying to get a tick up on the evolution, could just lose her entirely. Is instead going to be the Vanguard Bannerman protecting this Fiora, valuing the Challenger here as an answer to the Ezreal, as well as some of the weaker units like this Ice Veil Archer. We'll see if the Mystic Shot wants to come down here from Surrender to take out this barrier, trade this Chump Wump onto the Bannerman, is going to be the case. And now we get to see a battle of the turn 5 Titans here. As Garen and troop of Elnuks almost certainly going to come down. Both players now drained of their spell mana except for the 1 on the side of Surrender. It's going to be another Fiora picked up, going to turn into another riposte. The other 2, of course, being real, that one being the only Fiora riposte. Now Garen going to turn Garen into Garen's Judgment. The troop of Elnuks could be the play here from Surrender. We've seen this troop end games on the spot previously here in this tournament. Notably by Gagongsing, famously hitting 3 Elnuks more than 1 time. Let's see if Surrender wants to go for it. Could choose to bank some spell mana instead. If the troop comes down for nothing, it could just get eaten out by this Fiora. Definitely not something that you want to see. Still 9 damage on the side of FrozenWinter, nothing to sneeze at, and not a clean block from Surrender. Would just be an Ice Veil Archer getting eaten. No trades happening here just yet. No Brittle Steel targets on the side of FrozenWinter either. It will be the troop of Elnuks, only going to hit 1 troop of Elnuks. Not bad, but not great. Could be worse, could be a lot better. Couldn't actually be much worse. The only thing worse would be no Elnuks at all, but the troop going to call 1 troop here is going to get challenged out by the Fiora. Will put her in Brittle Steel range and the Avaros and Marksman range. That is a problem for the future FrozenWinter now. Here in the present, just going to push through 5 damage and eat this troop onto the Fiora, ticking up on the evolution. Does have a slew of barrier spells alongside this single combat, so the Marksman could come down but might not kill. FrozenWinter also has the option to just let the Fiora die, as he does have another copy in hand. However, that one will not have 4 attack. Could also let her die and let the Radiant Guardian come down here. As a 5/5 tough with lifesteal. Going to be a big swing for FrozenWinter. A relatively tough card for the Ezreal decks to deal with. It will just be the Ezreal coming down straight away for Surrender, saying, you better have an answer for this or I'm going to Mystic Shot your Fiora. Couple of options on the side of FrozenWinter. Could send the Garen at it with the single combat. Will get the evolution. Unfortunately happening in the middle of his opponent's turn. The worst time to upgrade Garen. It is 2 turns now off of getting that start of round value, as you will just start with an attack token on your own turn and will not get one here in the middle of your opponent's turn. No answer for this from Surrender, actually. No Brittle Steel going to be able to touch this Garen in his 5 toughness, and just a couple mana shy of a Harsh Winds. There's going to be 1 Ezreal down for Surrender and just 2 more in the deck. With this first troop of Elnuks underperforming and pulling out another troop of Elnuks, that is also just 1 left in the deck. Surrender down to a small number of win conditions already. Not that there were ever a lot to start. Let's see if he wants to go for the riposte to save this Fiora. Hovering the Fiora's riposte, unlikely to use that one. Is actually going to use the Fiora's riposte. Going to save her, saying, I care more about these other ripostes in my hand than getting another Fiora. The Avarosan Marksman going to just ding off the barrier there. Ezreal up to 3 targets for Surrender. And now a Fleet Feather Tracker on the side of FrozenWinter to another Avarosan Marksman for Surrender. Going to potentially eat another riposte out of this Fiora. It's going to be a single swing with this regenerating upgraded Garen. Going to continue to give FrozenWinter attack tokens at the start of every turn. The Garen's Judgment in his hand, of course, also an upgraded Garen now. We'll see if it's just an attack with the Garen or if he wants to line up this Fiora and preemptively riposte or wants to trade it into something. We'll be trading into the troop of Elnuks. Going to decide if he wants to riposte. Would be very vulnerable to the 2 Brittle Steels in the hand of Surrender. Does have to be a consideration here. Of course, Harsh Winds, also a card that could be coming out here, is just going to sacrifice the Fiora into the troop. If a Harsh Winds comes out here, will be countered out by this riposte. Could just get Brittle Steeled again after. And that will be a lot of targets onto the Ezreal, making it very close to upgrade for Surrender. Of course, if things do just work out this way, a Radiant Guardian almost sure to come down on the side of FrozenWinter. Now Surrender down to just 9 life here on turn 7 of game 1 of this top 4 matchup. Going to be the Bull Elnuk coming out of the hand, not the deck of Surrender. A little less valuable that way. The Fleet Feather Tracker, the response from FrozenWinter, not going to be Avarosan Marksman, instead just going to be a pass from Surrender. Back into the Radiant Guardian with the Lifesteal and Tough on the side of FrozenWinter. Will be the Avarosan Marksman now coming down onto this Fleet Feather Tracker, taking that out. Going to be a board advantage and card advantage as a whole on the side of Surrender. Does have Frostbites for this Judgment as well. And a third Brittle Steel with no targets is not what you wanted to see here. It's actually going to be rather difficult to upgrade this Ezreal now, as Surrender effectively having 5 dead cards in his 6-card hand. However, Harsh Winds will counteract the Judgment, and if he can trade some damage onto this Radiant Guardian with one of these Marksman or Archer, he will have the opportunity to Brittle Steel it later on. Still a couple turns off of having, actually 1 turn off rather, of having Judgment and Riposte mana would get around this Harsh Winds. Will be the attacks now from FrozenWinter thanks to this upgraded Garen, giving him the attack token every single turn. Deciding not to attack with the Radiant Guardian is just going to be the Garen. Will almost certainly be a block here from FrozenWinter. Is actually going to attack with the Radiant Guardian as well. Says, I want to threaten lethal. I know you can block it out, but I have to make you do something. Trying to close out this game number 1 here in a rather quick fashion. Will be an Iceveil Archer lined up onto the Garen. We'll see what other effects are going to come out here. Will be the Bull Elnuk now into the Radiant Guardian. Could be a Harsh Winds as well, as it would line up some nice attacks on the side of Surrender. Will be the Harsh Winds coming out now. Garen gonna fall down to a 0-6, Radiant Guardian down to a 0-5. This will take away all of the attack. 2 Riposte still in the hand of FrozenWinter. Going to put this Judgment online now, though. Is the 3 Brittle Steel and 2 Mushrooms not going to be able to stop this Garen Judgment? However, not going to happen this turn, as Garen is still at 0 attack, frostbitten as he is. Just a note, these are blocks, not attacks. Surrender does still have an attack token, so you are going to see the barrier come onto this Radiant Guardian, and that does mean these Brittle Steels are going to continue to sit dead in his hand. 5 useless cards in the hand of Surrender. Might even throw some of these Brittle Steels at the Garen while he has the chance just to get the Ezreal upgrade. Would be a bit of an odd play, as he does not currently have an Ezreal, and does need spells to actually make him work once he gets one. Surrender considering his options, as there is a 3-attack Radiant Guardian now on the side of FrozenWinter. Going to elect not to attack with his board, not wanting to lose anything to that. And another Judgment picked up by FrozenWinter, going to attack for lethal again on his own turn. Now going to be 2 blocks from the Marksman onto Garen and this Radiant Guardian. Judgment likely to be saved for the attack from Surrender, however he does have 2 copies of it. Could just throw it out here to stop this damage being traded back onto the Radiant Guardian. Says that's not worth it at all. What are you talking about? And just lets the damage go through. Is going to be a permanent Brittle Steel target now on the side of that Radiant Guardian. Surrender thinking about his next play carefully. Navigating some murky waters here with this completely dead hand. Is going to be the Static Shock onto the Radiant Guardian and the Garen. Throwing it at the Radiant Guardian instead of the face to get the 2 targets onto the Ezreal is going to be a Harsh Winds pickup, and that's not exactly what he wanted to see. Just a few too many Frostbite effects, and that's going to be another Garen in the hand of FrozenWinter. 2 Garen left in hand, to the Garen on board, as well as a real Judgment. Ice Veil Archer now going to come down onto this Garen. Just Frostbite effects and Mushrooms as far as the eye can see for Surrender. Does have this Brittle Steel to finally take out this Radiant Guardian, though. And will just be a full swing out. Going to be a full take back on that full swing out. This could be tempting for FrozenWinter to go for a Judgment. Will be counteracted by the Brittle Steel. Could then be counteracted by the Riposte into another Brittle Steel. Does have to be considering what these 3 cards that have just been sitting in Surrender's hand are. It looks like it will be a Judgment onto this Radiant Guardian, which, if my math is correct, does not work out for FrozenWinter. Going to reconsider this, actually. Going to be the Riposte onto the Garen into the Judgment to play around the Brittle Steel. Unfortunately, another Harsh Winds, rather, coming out from Surrender is going to make that all pointless. That will be no deaths from any units here, but 3 damage pushed through to FrozenWinter from this Marksman. Will be 17-9. And going down to 1 HP on this Radiant Guardian. Now we go over to Surrender's turn, but still an attack token for FrozenWinter. Or rather, sorry, that was Surrender's turn. Back to FrozenWinter's turn. Getting confused with these attacks myself. He's going to get the Swiftwing Lancer down. And a 13 mana Thermogenic Beam in the hand of Surrender. Could take out this Garen. Would just run into another Garen. Of course, does not know that. In this one, a rather close race. Upgraded Ezreal for Surrender. However, no copies yet to be found. He's going to have to find one soon if he's going to take it home here in game number 1 of this top 4 match. Surrender sitting on a very reactive hand, hoping to get some draw power through Avaros and Sentries, or ideally Progress Day. Is just going to have to pass the turn. It will be an attack from Garen and the Lancer. Lancer picking up this Icevale Archer. The Radiant Guardian says, I might as well go in too. You don't have a board, Surrender, and you're not building one up anytime soon or over the last few turns. Might as well go for the fences, and it is going to be a flurry of blocks from Surrender. Brittle Steel down onto the only target in this Radiant Guardian. Going to let this Bull Elnuk live a little bit longer and get some more value. This Bull Elnuk actually seeming to get more value than the Troop of Elnuks ever did. Continuously contesting the board of FrozenWinter. Now, Swiftwing Lancer, the new Brittle Steel target, as it is down to 1 health, will continue to give this Bull Elnuk value. Garen gonna heal himself up there. Give the attack token back to FrozenWinter despite it being Surrender's turn. And a Bright Steel Protector matching a second Thermogenic Beam from Surrender. Thinking about his play here, does need to find an Ezreal. Is just going to be another pass. And this Garen, very effective here. Versus this very fragile hand from Surrender. Bright Steel Protector onto the Swiftwing Lancer. Will let it contest this Bull Elnuk. However, 2 more Brittle Steel on the side of Surrender. Going to get more value out of this Bull. Considering if he wants to beam this Garen and be rid of it for good. Of course, 2 more Garen in the hand of FrozenWinter. Not going to let that happen. Surrender trying to piece together whether or not this is a winnable game. Is going to start off with the Brittle Steel onto the Swiftwing Lancer. Followed by another Brittle Steel onto this Bright Steel Protector. Followed by a Thermogenic Beam onto the Garen. Says, I don't want to take any damage this turn. Going to have to use these Brittle Steels at some point. Not wanting to use 13 mana. And it will be the Garen single combating into this Bull Elnuk. Thinking this over. Is certainly going to get another Garen down this turn. Will still have a big enough board to kill Surrender on the following turn. Is just going to let this happen. Now will be Garen coming down. Surrender can't be happy to see that one. Of course, unsurprising as these cards have been sitting in his hand for a long time. Still going to challenge the Bull Elnuk. Says, I don't need the single combat. I can just pull this off to the side. So the barrier does still sit on my challenger unit. Frostbite's wearing off and Surrender picking up the 3rd copy of Harsh Winds, and FrozenWinter going to go immediately into combat. Going to be the Harsh Winds onto the Bright Steel Protector and the Garen, which I believe means no more Frostbite effects in this Elnuk Ezreal deck. Is going to be a Vanguard Sergeant created, a War Chef coming down as well. Only 2 Shrooms and a Thermogenic Beam left for Surrender. Not going to be enough to get it done here as Garen slaps the attack token back onto FrozenWinter's board. Going to be a full swing out, and the Get Excited top deck not going to be able to save Surrender here in game number 1, taking back the swings. Rearranging the order a little bit, and it's going to be a full swing. Surrender going down here in game number 1 of this top 4. With FrozenWinter winning game number 1, we'll be switching over to what is possibly my favorite deck so far of this format in the Dusk and Dawn Anivia Karma combo deck. Surrender electing also to switch over to Lucian Garen Ionia. We'll have to see what comes out here. Opening up with a slew of 3-drops on the side of Surrender. Gonna get us started off with his Fleet Feather Tracker. And a Troop of Elnuks in the hand of FrozenWinter. A card that we have seen turn the tides of many a game, especially in these Demacia matchups. It's just going to be 2 damage pushed through to start things off from Surrender. Going to be a pass from FrozenWinter. Going to float that 3 spell mana, 2 on the side of Surrender. Going to pick up a Laurent Protégé here. There's a couple of aggressive options as well as some defensive ones. Could get down a draw with this Shadow Assassin, push some damage out with the Senna, as there has been a pass on the side of FrozenWinter. Not gonna have anything until this Troop of Elnuks likely, unless this Avalanche looks particularly juicy, which it could, depending on what comes down from Surrender here. Of course, a Radiant Strike to protect a Senna or Shadow Assassin. We'll see exactly what kind of game he wants to play. And it is going to be a more defensive one as the Laurent Protégé comes down. An Ice Veil Archer or Avalanche could get played out here, although rather unlikely in the face of this Laurent Protégé. Still a couple turns off of the Karma or Troop, but it actually will be the Ice Veil Archer, at least a consideration here. Going to come down onto this Fleet Feather Tracker. Likely wants to be challenged out by this Protégé in order to soften up the board for a better Avalanche. And actually will be an attack too. Avalanche could come out here, although likely to let Surrender commit a little bit more to the board first. A very aggressive start on the side of FrozenWinter, playing a few mind games perhaps. And Surrender not even going to block it, is just going to take the 3. Perhaps considering the Avalanche, we'll just throw this Fleet Feather Tracker into this Ice Veil Archer. Bright Steel Protector picked up, as well as a Catalyst. Nothing great to accelerate into yet for FrozenWinter, as turn 5 is what he's looking for at the moment, and we'll just find that naturally on the next turn. Some aggressive options, though, for Surrender, as well as some defensive ones. Does have the Bright Steel, a second Protégé, some card draw with the Assassin, or could go for this Senna to push through the most amount of damage possible. Can only play 1 unit though, 4 mana. Not enough for 2, no matter how you slice it. Is going to be the Senna coming down. This Avalanche is just going to get played out here by FrozenWinter, not throwing the Elixir of Iron onto his Ice Veil Archer. That's going to be a Radiant Strike onto the Senna, protecting her for now. And now FrozenWinter gets to consider this Elixir of Iron again. Would likely just get traded off into the Protégé, as well as eating 5 damage, but a consideration nonetheless. Does have the Troop of Elnooks coming down next turn, or perhaps the Karma. Will be the Elixir of Iron onto this Ice Veil Archer. Says if you're going to have 2 units live, I'm going to need at least 1. And this Avalanche only actually killing the Fleet Feather Tracker. It's a slew of combat spells slung by both competitors here. And actually just going to be an attack with the Senna. She does have First Strike. This Ice Veil Archer could get thrown in front of it to block out the damage, or we could see Surrender going up 17-13 here in game number 2 to get us started off, going into this pivotal turn 5 for FrozenWinter. Time ticking down for Surrender. Decides he does want to throw this Protégé into the Archer. And that will be a confirmation on attacks. No effect's going to come out of FrozenWinter. Is going to fall down to 13 here. Going into this turn 5 with the attack token. Could see a big troop of Elnooks here. Going to spin it around. What's going to come out? Absolutely nothing as he puts it back in his hand. Not willing to roll the dice just yet, considering the Karma, and is going to play it, and it's 1 Bull Elnook. Not great. As you can see, FrozenWinter a little unhappy there. However, 7-8 worth of stats for 5 mana. Still nothing to sneeze at. Could have been better, could have been worse. A pretty average roll for the troop here. So there are still 4 Elnooks left in the deck. Going to be the Lucian now coming down. Does make killing this Senna a lot more threatening. And it is just going to be a pass from FrozenWinter. It looks like not willing to attack and let this Lucian upgrade. Of course, now Surrender going to play another Laurent Protégé. This Lucian Senna lovers duo here in Legends of Runeterra. Going to be rather threatening in the face of everything that FrozenWinter has brought to the table. Once again, left with this Dusk and Dawn as we see him so often, but no Anivia just yet. Almost certain to work out when it does come down, though. No Denies or Will of Ionias or anything like that on the side of Surrender so far. Now an attack with both Elnooks going to come in. Could be a trade onto this troop with the Senna, but actually just going to let it go. Or perhaps that was my mistake. That was actually That was Frozen Winter confirming the attacks. Now it is Surrender's turn to line up the blocks. Was about to say it would be very weird if Surrender declared no blocks here. Would fall down to 10 life. Instead is going to be that Senna blocking onto the troop. The Senna torn away from Lucian, and he will upgrade now. Going to have double strike himself. Give some additional combat phases. If units die. No unit self-destruction in this deck, though. Often see Lucian paired with Shadow Isle for things like the Glimpse Beyond. Not going to be the case this time around, and Garen picked up along with another Karma. This Bull Elnuk could get a lot done here. Could protect the Lucian, give it a safe swing here. So the barrier would not be popped until the trade back after the first strike. Double strike, a very powerful ability in Legends of Runeterra. I believe Senna and Lucian being the only units to have it. Could also throw this Laurent Protege into the Bull Elnuk to kill it and get an additional combat phase. All of these have to be considerations going through the mind of Surrender right now. As he runs out of time, will be the Brightsteel Protector onto the Laurent Protege. Not what I expected at all. Guess he is just going to pull this Bull Elnuk to the side. Or it could be a swing out with everything but the Lucian. Shadow Assassin down for Frozen Winter. Likely to just get matched back by one from Surrender. Although this Iceveil Archer, pretty good swing in the favor of combat this turn for Frozen Winter. Going to get that down onto the Lucian, and the Radiant Strike picked up. A rather small lineup of attackers now left for Surrender. Is going to attack with this Protege first. Life total currently tied 13 to 13. Thinking about how he wants to line up these attacks, if he wants to pull something into this Protege, and what. Could bring in the Shadow Assassin, does elect to do that. Will just let this Shadow Assassin get through, as well as eating Frozen Winter. Shadow Assassin is going to go in with the Brightsteel Protector. Decides that if he can get a second combat phase, he would like that very much, thank you. And this Iceveil Archer block onto this Brightsteel Protector will make it happen. Of course, only another 2 damage would be pushed through this turn from the Shadow Assassin. Lucian still not able to attack. And if the Iceveil Archer blocks, nothing to eat with this Protege, but it will be the Bull Elnuk instead, blocking onto this Brightsteel Protector. 2 damage going to get pushed through by this Shadow Assassin. Lucian going to give him another combat phase. A pass over from Frozen Winter. The Protege challenging the Iceveil Archer, and another 2 damage pushed through from this Shadow Assassin. Going to knock Frozen Winter down to 9. Still, not a lot of cards on the side of Surrender. The Karma finally going to come down here. Going to turn the other one into an Insight of Ages. Quickly approaching the Enlightenment turn. Does have a Catalyst as well to accelerate the process. And another Senna picked up from Surrender. It's going to make this Lucian even harder to deal with, as the Senna will upgrade into a double-striked 5-3. Will be the Shadow Assassin to get things started for Surrender on this turn, though. A Vanguard Bannerman pickup. Rather unlikely to whiff, as there are 2 Shadow Assassin already on his side of the board. See Surrender kind of excited to see this Bannerman come down. Unlikely to see anything else come out from Frozen Winter this turn unless he wants to attack. Does seem unlikely, though, as the Lucian would give him another combat phase. Just a pass from Frozen Winter. Going to be the Vanguard Bannerman. Hitting, buffing up Surrender's board to scary, scary stat lines. Is going to be the Catalyst now. Accelerating to 8 mana. Will not be the Enlightened turn next, though. Only turn 9 for Frozen Winter, going into the turn 8 of Surrender. Does still have this Laurent Protege to force out another combat phase. And Pack Mentality, definitely not a good pickup here. As this is pre-patch, that is still just going to give +3/+3 and Overwhelm to all units of the same creature typing. Not going to give everything +2/+2 and Overwhelm. It is going to be a large swing here from Surrender. 6 elusive damage going to come through, as well as this Protege challenging the Karma. Does mean he will get another combat phase and likely end the game with these Shadow Assassins. Of course, the Bannerman buff onto the Lucian does take Brittle Steel off the table. A poorly timed top deck here for Frozen Winter, and it looks like Surrender is going to be tying this one up 1-1 here in this top 4. Still a single combat and Radiant Strike available for him. Frozen Winter hovering the inside of Ages. Will only get 1 spell as opposed to the 4 that we're used to seeing, as we are still just 1 shy of the Enlightenment turn. Even if there was a way to protect this Laurent Protégé, there is still a single combat on the side of Surrender to force out a death of a unit. That's not going to get it done either here. Going to be the health potion onto the Bull Elnuk, going to block out this Lucian for good, as well as the Protégé. However, the Shadow Assassins still going to get through for 6, 10 damage actually, because of the way that things lined up here. Surrender mislining up his attacks a little bit. This Laurent Protégé will not die until after the Lucian does. Of course, the single combat now going to come through from the Protégé onto this, and it's going to be the single combat. However, that will still be the additional combat phase coming out as this Laurent Protégé going to die to this Bull Elnuk. Will be 10 damage pushed through by the Shadow Assassins and the Bannermen. And then the additional combat phase going to come in, and these Shadow Assassins going to finish him off. Surrender looking a little unnecessarily worried here. Unless I am missing something, does just have the lethal still. More or less completely tapped out on the side of Frozen Winter. Has nothing left to play. Going to be a Radiant Strike. Back onto this Lucian, actually. Wants to let it survive its encounter with this Bull Elnuk. However, the death of the Protégé going to come out first. It's going to be a pass from Frozen Winter, and the second combat step from Surrender. Going to throw his Lucian all the way to the end, and that's going to be game number 2 going the way of Surrender. Here in the top 4, tying it up 1-1.
자, 서렌더 선수, 프로즈윈터러 선수, 프로즈윈터러 선수, 서렌더 선수.
1-1 is the game count here in this turning point game number 3. Both players electing to go back to the decks that they have lost with already in this match. Does mean Surrender will be back on the Elnuk Ezreal, and Frozen Winter staying with this Karma Anivia combo deck. Not able to find the combo in the last game. A Dawn and Dusk sitting dead in his hand, waiting for an Anivia that never came. It will be a full mulligan on the side of Surrender. Bull Elnuk off the top, not what you want to see with the Troop of Elnuk in your hands already. Looks like it will just be a slow early game here out of both players. Of course, this Piltover's on deck, also a prime target for this Dawn and Dusk Anivia, as it is difficult for these Piltovers on decks to deal with Anivia. Thermogenic Beam, really the only single spell big enough to shoot her down. Of course, leaving no mana left for the Mystic Shot to finish off the egg. However, a second Anivia not going to be particularly useful, unless, of course, Surrender does find a way to deal with the first. Iceveil Archer down onto this Shadow Assassin. Will let Surrender push through 3 damage, take an early life lead. Would be very surprised to see a block here. It's just going to be the pass from Frozen Winter. Surrender perhaps considering Mystic Shotting it anyway. Getting the 2 targets down onto the Ezreal in a single turn. Ezreal, of course, already in the hand of Surrender. Does mean hyper-accelerating to this win condition can work out for him, especially with this progress day to refuel. Thinking long and hard about using his mana efficiently, not letting that 1 go to waste. And he is just going to pass the turn, not going to Mystic Shot just yet. It will be the Bull Elnuk coming down now. These 4/5s difficult to deal with. However, a second Static Shock lines things up rather nicely here for Surrender. Can just throw that at both units, block out the Bull Elnuk, line it up for the second Static Shock next turn, or even take them both out with a Mystic Shot and a 1-mana Beam. Of course, the Elixir of Iron going to snuff that out, but we'll see how it works out. It is going to be the Static Shock to start things off. No response out of Frozen Winter here, as nothing is dying. Going to be the 2 attacks coming through. Blocked by the Iceveil Archer, almost certainly lining up this second Static Shock beautifully. Is going to be the case. It's going to be 2 damage pushed through. Not a lot, but nothing to sneeze at regardless. As we approach these pivotal turns here for Frozen Winter, getting closer and closer to this Anivia. get excited. The draw from the shock. Not going to do anything here just yet. However, a good pickup nonetheless. Now will be the pass. Second Elixir of Iron, but an Avarosan Marksman on the side of Surrender. Could ensure the death of one of these units if the static shock doesn't work out. Looks like Surrender just going to go straight for it. Not going to play the Marksman out first. Wants the double value. And we'll see how FrozenWinter plays with these Elixir of Irons. Does he want to save one? Does he want to save both? Does still have the spell mana to protect a Karma or Troop coming down as well. Karma almost certainly going to be the play here, especially if he lets these go. The 2 health they would be remaining with, not a lot in the face of this built over Zondek. And a Troop of Elnuks picked up for Surrender. As we know, FrozenWinter is not going to get a lot of value. Only 3 Elnuks left in the deck, one of them Bull. But there are still a full 5 left for Surrender. The Karma coming down here. Thermogenic Beam going to be the play. Almost certainly going to get snuffed out by this Elixir of Iron. Karma going to fall down to 1, but still going to give a random spell. Hopefully something better than what he was getting last game. Pack Mentality, not what you want to see in a Take Heart, actually. Going to be a pretty good one. Could get this Karma up, and it's going to be the Troop of Elnuks. What are we going to see off of it? Going to put that one back. And a second Troop of Elnuks from Surrender. Does make his first one a little bit worse, however, does give him a second chance if it whiffs. Gonna be the Troop, perhaps. Does still leave him with Take Heart mana, and the Troop just gonna be a 5 mana 3/3. Only 3 Elnuks left in around 30 cards. Is not going to be good odds. Surrender thinking of countering with his own Troop. His almost certainly going to get something here. Will be the case, and it's gonna get a Bull and a Troop. Surrender very happy about that one. That is the nature of card games sometimes. Our opponent playing the exact same thing could just be better. And it's going to be a recall now out of this Karma. Actually, pretty good pickup, as it does negate the targeting from the Ezreal, as well as could reset the health of this Karma, or give him another activation of this Troop of Elnuks. There were none in the top 10, but now those top 10 are gone. How many Elnuks remain? Only one way to find out. Almost certainly not going to happen proactively, though. We'll have to wait for something to come at this Troop. And the second Troop from Surrender, gonna pull another Bull Elnuk. 10 mana, 2 cards, getting a lot of stats down. And this Ezreal already in hand, so close to evolution thanks to the 2 static shocks. Gonna be a big swing out of Surrender here. And because of this Icevale Archer, no mana left to play the Anivia. Could still get down a Bull Elnuk. Couple of trades happening onto the troops. There is a Get Excited to protect one of them, or a Mystic Shot onto the Archer. Couple of options here. Going to go with none of them and just trade off his troops. They were free after all. Replacing themselves with these Bulls. Now 8 mana left to play with for FrozenWinter. Deciding between this Bull Elnuk and Shadow Assassin. His hand looking pretty good. Could go for the stat check. Instead going to go for the Shadow Assassin. Health Potion draw, not terrible. Hard to find a situation where you would say that Health Potion is a great draw, but about as good as it gets here, as he is down to 10 already. Ezreal still hasn't come out. It's going to be 3 more damage onto the Karma. It is going to be the Take Heart to counteract that one. Going to put her down to a 7-1. This Avarosan Marksman looking really juicy for Surrender. This Karma randomly created spell. Going to be an Insight of Ages. As we do tick just a little bit closer to this Enlightenment turn. The Anivia now going to come down. Still a few ways to protect this Karma. Health Potion, Recall, and Elixir of Iron. And this Winter's Breath now going to be a full board clear in a couple of turns. However, it does have to live until then. One more attack going to come out of Surrender before that's the case. The Avarosan Marksman getting the Take Heart. Or the Elixir of Iron, rather. The Take Heart, of course, already down onto the Karma. That is why she is so big to begin with. Looks like it will just be an attack from the Shadow Assassin, as this Anivia would get traded by a Bull Elnuk and will not be upgrading anytime soon. Mystic Shot mana still available. Let's see if he wants to risk the Anivia to take out the marksman. Is going to be the case. Pushing through, softening up the board of Surrender just a little bit. Does still have the recall if he wants to get this Egg Nivea into hand, as that is only 1 mana as opposed to the 7. However, not going to upgrade to the start of round, will still be vulnerable to the second Mystic Shot. Karma so close to upgrading, have to think. That could be the path to victory here. And it is going to be a block by the marksman, actually, not wanting to risk the Bull Elnook. Thinking FrozenWinter must have an answer for this if he's going to attack like this, and it actually will just be the upgraded Ezreal coming down. My mistake. The reason he saved the Mystic Shots is because he wants to kill his opponent. Doesn't have to worry about this Anivia. She didn't get enough value. 2 mana, not going to be enough to kill this Ezreal. Elusive blocker will be here, however, that is 2 Mystic Shot and a Get Excited on the side of Surrender to the 1 health, or the 10 health rather, of FrozenWinter. And as we are not going into the Enlightened turn, this will only be 3 health gained off of the health potion. Surrender just considering whether or not he wants to throw a Mystic Shot down here at the end of the turn before FrozenWinter has access to something like a Deny. As a Karma will randomly create a spell, and it's going to be an Avalanche. Not great for him in this situation, as it does clear out more of his board than his opponent's. And the Chump Wump going to come up huge here for Surrender. Not that he didn't already have lethal 6 ways to Sunday, but these 2 burst spells going to be a great way to finish out the game. This Avarosan Sentry from FrozenWinter not going to get it done here. This will be game number 2 going Surrender, swinging the momentum back in his favor for this match, as he was looking a little rough there in the early game, until this troop of Elnooks came down, swung things back with the back-to-back Elnooks. Surrender just mathing everything out, does not have priority to play anything anyway. Does have the attacks though. Could go for those, see how the blocks line up, and then throw out his spells. Nivea's Harsh Winds rather. Consideration here. Might throw this Will of Ionia at the Ezreal just to get the ball rolling. Running out of time now is FrozenWinter. Realizes that his back is against the wall. He has a good chance of just dying this turn. Not going to do anything. Looks like Surrender going to line up his spells. Will he just throw them all on the stack or play them one at a time? That's really the only decision left to be made in this game number 3. 13 life, not going to be enough in the face of all of the spells that Surrender has. The double Static Shock paying dividends here, upgrading this Ezreal very early, as well as having it in the opening hand. Very fortunate here for Surrender. Going to let the timer run down a little bit as he decides to Mystic Shot the Karma. Says, I don't even need the damage at the face thanks to these mushrooms. And if you do have answers, I want to make sure that this Karma doesn't get the Enlightened turn off. It will be a recall onto the Karma. Actually going to fizzle out this Mystic Shot, meaning that Ezreal will not get to deal 2 damage to the face. Will be a second Mystic Shot, this time at the face of FrozenWinter. FrozenWinter now having to wonder why this one went at the Karma instead of the face to begin with. This Insight of Ages could create a Deny, however, not going to be enough, and of course only getting 1 spell instead of the 4, as we are still 1 away from the Enlightened turn. No Catalyst coming out this game for FrozenWinter, counting up his mana, trying to figure out what he can do. What this Insight could possibly create is just going to let this one go. It's going to be 4 damage at the Nexus, and then the Karma coming back to his hand. Avarosan Sentry going to come down. Now Surrender still has attacks to line up, if that's the route he wants to go. FrozenWinter has to save this Winter's Breath for the Enlightened Karma. It's his only chance at coming back into this game. If he doesn't die here and gets the Karma down, could find himself healing back up with that health potion. Haven't run the numbers just yet, but I do not think it's going to be enough, especially with this progress day. Shadow Assassin, of course, going to block out this Ezreal, but that is still 8 damage. Going to be the Harsh Winds coming down onto the remaining Elnuks. Anivia going to survive this encounter with the troop. Every other unit on the side of FrozenWinter going to fall. It's actually going to be very difficult for FrozenWinter to win the game. He can hold on and not lose for another turn here, it seems, but not going to be able to actually get together a win unless a miracle happens. Dawn and Dusk could be the miracle that he needed. A big pickup here for FrozenWinter. However, his life total is still extremely low. But as we get into this Enlightened Karma turn, could be enough with the health potion. Some expensive spells still in the hand of Surrender. That is going to put him down to 2 with 10 mushrooms in deck. A potential to just lose the game here in the draw phase, but has to save this health potion for the Karma. 12 mana will be enough for Karma, Dusk and Dawn, and health potion. Her health potion will put him at 8. Get excited, knock him back down to 3. It could all depend on what comes out of this progress day then. Gonna be a pass over to FrozenWinter. The Anivia going to upgrade now. Let's see how many shrooms were on the top of his deck. Is it enough to finish the game? No shrooms, and it will be an attack from the Anivia, followed by an immediate health potion. Not getting the Karma down, actually. And a second Get Excited from Surrender, actually, almost certainly going to close this one out. I was too busy looking at the draw from FrozenWinter to notice this second Get Excited. Looks like Progress Day going to be the play, though, as it is the safer bet. In order to double Get Excited, would have to discard this Progress Day. And if there is 2 denies coming out of Surrender, or FrozenWinter rather, these denies, or these Get Exciteds would not get it done. Does need at least one of them to fully resolve for the Ezreal Mystic Shot to go off. Surrender considering his options. Going to throw a Chump Wump in front of the Anivia. Going to take him down to 13. But it will be the Get Excited coming out first from Surrender. Going to throw that at the face of FrozenWinter and see what sticks. He does only need this one to resolve. Does still have the mana for this Progress Day, which he can play in response here, and that should be all she wrote here in game number 3. The Progress Day going to resolve with the Mystic Shot ability. Ezreal going to leave the field, not going to get a second Mystic Shot ability off, but the Get Excited will still finish him off unless a big thing comes out of this Inside of Ages. However, the 7 mana heal 7 slow speed not going to be enough. Surrender takes game number 2 here, going into the top 4 here of the Korean Invitational. FrozenWinter may have won game number 1, but Surrender takes 2 back. Is now on his last deck. This knocks his spiders here, and FrozenWinter deciding he needs a change of pace away from this Karma Anivia after 2 failures so far here in this match, is going to go to this Draven Ezreal. Now, both players just finishing up their mulligans. Looks like Surrender will be starting off with the attack token. A Legion Rearguard going to make that all the more satisfying. Double Thermogenic Beam in the hand of FrozenWinter. Not going to be effective on turn 1, but can stave off this early board. Of course, House Spider going to be a little bit too much for that to deal with, but we'll see how things play out here in game number 4 of the Korean Invitational. Going to be a... I was mistaken, actually. The mulligans had me a little bit confused. Looks like Surrender will be going second, actually. Going to get his House Spider or Arachnid Horror down here. Either way, 6 damage going to be on the board. A Mystic Shot and Thermogenic Beams here on the side of FrozenWinter will have his pick of the litter on how he wants to, what he wants to remove and how he wants to remove it. It's actually going to be a pass, which means the Mystic Shot likely to be the answer here onto this Arachnoid Horror. Arachnid Horror, rather, Arachnoid Sentry being the card in FrozenWinter's hand. Going to be the Legion Rearguard connecting. Still a lot of buffs on the side of Surrender, thanks to this Frenzied Skitterer and Arena Battlecaster. Going to be the Legion Rearguard coming out. Nothing just yet out of FrozenWinter. A House Spider certain to come down here. Will be a stun onto this Rearguard just to get a body on the board. However, a rather stable hand from FrozenWinter if he can find time to play everything out. Thermogenic Beam onto this Spider could even be a consideration. Almost certainly not, though, as he doesn't know about the Frenzied Skitterer and Arena Battlecaster. Doesn't know how much this wide board could come back to bite him. Looks like he is going to go for it anyway, though, sniffing it out, saying if you have a board buff, I don't want to deal with this 1/1, as well as an effective use of the 1 mana. Could go for an attack here as well, trading onto the House Spider. Could just decide to block out a Legion Rearguard instead, though. Does have the second Arachnoid Sentry, although next turn is Chump Wump turn. So the 4-mana 4/4 going to get a lot done here, and a Crawling Sensation, rather, for Surrender. Going to be as wide a board as possible. Does leave the mana for the Arena Battlecaster. Is going to be a second Arachnoid Sentry onto a Legion Rearguard. Could even go for a value trade onto this Spiderling, if not for the Arena Battlecaster. Could be the second Thermogenic Beam onto the Spider here, although unlikely. More threatening things on the board is just going to preserve his life total. Throwing this Thermogenic Beam at the Spider does mean 2 blockers going to come through, certainly onto the Battlecaster just to get it done and over with. Then we will see what he throws it under. Will be the Legion Rearguard. Could go for a House Spider here if he really wants to preserve the life total. Is going to go for the Battlecaster, saving the long-term life total rather than the immediate one. Is going to fall down to 11, and not a lot of cards actually. No mana on the side of Surrender for this Crawling Sensation. Will be a second Frenzied Skitterer to 2 Static Shocks, a Progress Day, and a Chump Wump. Is going to line up the Static Shock this turn for the second one next turn, as we saw Surrender do in the last game. Ezreal deck, of course, on the side of FrozenWinter does mean he gets just as much value, too. Will be the Skitterer coming down now, which means another one to come down on the next turn. House Spider of his own for FrozenWinter. Another Chump Wump. Not great here, as Surrender could just push through 10 damage with the board. Not going to go for that. Will be the House Spider. Although now the Frenzied Skitterer gets to come down. Buff up the remaining Spiders. Have a couple fearsome attackers. Will take this Spiderling off the board as a blocker effectively. Will be able to eat some damage, but not going to be able to trade back onto anything. But this second Static Shock going to come through big onto this Rearguard and House Spider. Crawling Sensation likely to come out in its place, and a Culling Strike a good pickup. No mana to play at this turn, but Surrender already out of cards here on turn 6 rather, if he wants to play the Crawling Sensation. Turn 6, no Hecarim is going to feel pretty good. Is 11 a precarious life total to be at against the Spectral Horseman. It will be the Crawling Sensation filling up the board of Surrender, getting rid of all of his cards but floating the 3 spell mana. 1 mana not going to do anything for FrozenWinter. It's going to be a very aggressive turn here. A full swing out. Let's see how the blocks line up rather. Will be at least 7 damage coming through thanks to these fearsome units, and it looks like he is going to fall down to 2 here very early on. If he can find a way to deal with this board, though, could come back into the game, of course, to a very low life total to be at when there are Hecarims in your opponent's deck. A single top deck from Surrender could end the game, and a third Frenzied Skitterer. Not what I expected to see, but what's going to be coming out here? Raven going to get the Spinning Axe. Unfortunately, just going to push through damage, it seems. Chump Wump coming up now. No real reason for Surrender to block with anything. Might throw this Hapless Aristocrat under something. Instead, going to be the Frenzied Skitterer coming out, staving off the aggression. Says, I like my life total at 20. Thank you very much. Some mushrooms to be discarded to this Spinning Axe. Is just going to swing in with the Draven and the Chump Wump. No great blocks on the side of Surrender. Will have to trade a Skitterer into the Chump Wump if that's the way he wants to go. Might just throw the Aristocrat under it. Could just take the 5 also. 15, not a bad life total. Is going to turn this Aristocrat into a Spider, as well as save the 3 life. Could be a Spinning Axe onto this Draven here. Try and get it closer to the upgrade. Not going to happen, as it is likely to have to block a Skitterer next turn, which does mean will not be able to upgrade, as it will die in the combat. With 1 spell mana remaining, going to be a pass from FrozenWinter over to Surrender, and a 3rd Chump Wump. Not great here. Going to be a full swing out from Surrender. A couple of blocks lined up. Actually, mathing this out, the Progress Day going to have to be the play here. Let's see what he can find. 2 Jury Rig and a Rummage, actually. Could be enough here, as the Spinning Axe will block. Gonna rearrange his blocks probably. But these Jury Rigs gonna come in huge for FrozenWinter. Actually gonna be able to survive now as he plays this other Jury Rig. Actually gonna go for the Rummage onto the Jury Rig and a Mushroom. Going to draw another Progress Day and a Get Excited. Will summon up this Jury Rig, and FrozenWinter going to survive at 1 here. Surrender looking a little confused, as am I. Did not expect this to happen. And it will also be the Spinning Axe onto this Jury Rig to trade with the House Spider. That's going to leave Surrender with just a 1-1 in what he was sure was a slew of lethal attacks. He's going to be left with just the Spiderling and the Elise. Incredible comeback here from FrozenWinter. Not out of the woods by any means, but clawing his way back into the game. Not dead just yet. Will be the Elise coming down from Surrender. Considering his options, his opponent left at 1, but 2 Chump Wumps in hand to contest the board, along with this Culling Strike and Get Excited. Not going to play the Elise. Of course, a Hecarim could still end the game here. Another Crawling Sensation. Chump Wump going to come down. There is the Elise now. And the Culling Strike immediately onto the Elise. Going to be met with the Crawling Sensation, rather. Actually going to take back the Culling Strike. Just going to go for an attack with the Chump Wump first. See if Surrender wants to take the damage or block with this Spiderling. Says if you have a Crawling Sensation or a second Elise, I want you to consider playing it now. If you block out this Chump Wump. 14, not a bad life total to be at, though. Could just take the damage here, especially with what he's pushing out. However, trading 1 Spider for 2 does seem appealing. Is just going to take the damage instead. Could be waiting for the removal spell on the Elise. The patience of Surrender is going to pay off here. The Culling Strike going to come down will give him a live Crawling Sensation. Not out of the woods yet. No mana to get down the Chump Wump, actually. Does mean this Crawling Sensation will be lethal if he doesn't find something off of this Rummage. Get Excited and the Chump Wump block will let 1 Spider through. The second Get Excited and the House Spider, actually, going to protect FrozenWinter's life total. This Rummage coming in big. A shrug from him. And the double Get Excited actually answers the Hecarim off the top. Surrender sitting up, getting serious now. An Arachnid Horror at least will force out the Chump Wump, if not the Get Excited. Almost certainly going to be the Chump Wump. Surrender having to reconsider whether or not he can swing out with this board. It would be a lot of clean trades and a lot of damage pushed back. Would actually be lethal if Surrender swings out here for FrozenWinter. So it would push back with 10 damage. The double Get Excited. Actually just 1 going to come down onto this Arachnid Horror. Wants to clean that up a little bit. Thermogenic Beam off the top. Going to answer a Hecarim just fine as well. Going to find the time to Progress Day into a Mystic Shot, Culling Strike, and Get Excited. This game suddenly back in FrozenWinter's favor. He is the aggressor now, saying, I'm going to swing with 13 damage. If you take it, you are dead. A lot of burn in hand. Almost certainly going to have to block out at least both the Chump Wumps here. From Surrender, and Victory finding farther and farther away from him. FrozenWinter making an incredible comeback here in what I was sure was going to be a victory for Surrender, finding 2 Jury Rig in the Rummage off of the Progress Day, saving him here. Once you get to resolve a second Progress Day, as he already did against this Noxus Spiders deck, you have to feel like you're in a great position. If this is the only block we see lined up, it will be the end of game number 4 here in FrozenWinter's favor. Going to throw that down. Will be 8 life left for Surrender. However, even that's not going to be enough. Doing the math here, realizes he's dead to 2 Get Exciteds and a Mystic Shot, and which is exactly what is in the hand of FrozenWinter. Going to move this over to the Chump Wump. Victory crawling farther and farther away from Surrender as his board is starting to dwindle. We could be seeing a game number 5 here, something we haven't seen in a little while. Is going to be the confirmation here. 2 damage push through. Answers abundant for a Hecarim off the top. No longer threatened by anything. So Arachnid Horror going to immediately get excited. Reconsidering, does have this Culling Strike, is going to use the Get Excited at the life total, actually. Going to be 9 at Surrender, 1 for... Going to reconsider this Thermogenic Beam, realizes that is his Hecarim answer, which would actually end the game if it came off the top and the Thermogenic Beam was gone, as the Overwhelm from the Hecarim would get over this, and a Mark of the Isle, absolutely not going to do it here. The 3rd Progress Day. I don't think I've ever seen 3 Progress Day resolve against the Spiders deck. It's just going to pass, and there's the Ezreal, all ready to upgrade. And a Brother's Bond, absolutely not going to get it done here for Surrender. FrozenWinter, clawing his way back from the clutches of defeat, says, you can't kill me that easily. Ezreal gonna come down, put Surrender in a museum, bury him in that sarcophagus, as this will be game number 4 going to FrozenWinter, tying us up here 2-2. Which means it will be the Karma Anivia still has to find a win against this Noxus Spiders. That is going to be game number 5 coming at you. Right up next between Surrender and FrozenWinter after an intense game 4. Folks, it all comes down to this one. Game number 5 here in what is sure to be one for the history books between Surrender and FrozenWinter. Both players getting some hard-fought victories in here in this match. However, one more win is needed to punch your ticket through to the finals. FrozenWinter going to be relegated back to this Karma Anivia deck that Surrender is 2-0 against so far. Does need to finally find a win with this 3rd deck in this conquest format. Of course, Surrender on the Noxus Spiders again, unable to pick up the win just barely in game number 4. This Dawn and Dusk in the opening hand of FrozenWinter has left him high and dry before, unable to pair an Anivia with it in some pivotal moments so far in this tournament. Of course, the Troop of Elnuks going to get mulliganed by him, not trusting his tournament life to the RNG of the Troop. And an Avalanche pickup from FrozenWinter could swing this early game in his favor if he can get enough advantage out of it. We've seen a lot of players be greedy with their Ruinations in the past and get punished for it, or not finding an opportune time to play it. Going to see if FrozenWinter will fall into the same category here, or if he can find the perfect moment to get this landslide down. Going to start off with an Ice Veil Archer onto this Precious Pet. Going to stonewall out an attack from the Arachnid Horror as well. Not as much of an early game as you would like to see on the side of Surrender. Of course, going to work out in his favor, as it will mean he doesn't get blown out by this Avalanche. Hapless Aristocrat going to dissuade an Avalanche just a little bit, as well as this crowd favorite coming down pretty early. The board not going to be wide enough. Avalanche unappealing in the face of a Hapless Aristocrat. A couple of units and 1 unit of his own. A second Avalanche could get it done, but Hecarim coming down. The turn 6 terror that eluded Surrender in game number 4. Going to be tucked away safe and sound for his curve. It's going to be a pass from FrozenWinter, not wanting to attack into this Hapless Aristocrat. Not wanting to get this Avalanche down either. Not wanting to get the Avarosan Sentry down either. Electing to keep that 1 spell mana. Is going to put him up to 3 instead of 2. Of course, Bull Elnuk now picked up here. Going to contest this crowd favorite rather nicely, as well as setting up the avalanche. Going to consider it. Instead, going to go for the Iceveil Archer, actually. Going to dissuade this from attacking at all. Going to delay the avalanche by at least a couple of turns, as no damage is going to get traded back onto this. Certainly not going to have an attack with it out of surrender. No clean attacks on the side of surrender either, though. Could just swing in with the hapless aristocrat. Of course, we are getting closer to this Hecarim turn. This decisive maneuver in combination with it, a very powerful set of cards. Not much for FrozenWinter just yet. Gonna get the Avarosan Sentry down instead of the Catalyst. Nothing to hyper-accelerate into, is just going to value the board and maintaining the spell mana here in this turn number 5. Another Avarosan Sentry off the top, met by an Elise on the side of surrender, starting to build up a board that is resilient to this avalanche. FrozenWinter might have missed his window here, playing that Iceveil Archer over the Bull Elnuk. Telegraphing a little bit too hard, but also surrender's draw is just not lining up to lose to the avalanche. We'll have to squeak value out of it somehow, though. Trying to think about his attacks. Anything he goes in with will probably just get blocked out by this hapless aristocrat, and if your board trades into your opponents, your avalanches will never get value that way. You usually want to use them for a +2 at least in these matchups, as it's a rather obtainable goal. Doesn't want his board to get blocked out by all of the avalanche targets. The Elise now going to come down from surrender. This avalanche starting to slip away in terms of value, could just get played here, is instead going to smartly attack first. No reason to just throw your board away when there's damage to be traded off, hapless aristocrats to be popped, and face damage to be dealt. Looks like it will just be the single block here onto the Iceveil Archer. Was really hoping for a block from the Elise or the crowd favorite. Would have set up the avalanche a little bit too nicely, though. Dreams come true, but not this time around. Not on this play. It will just be 5 damage pushed through to surrender, unless he wants to also line up the Precious Pet onto this Iceveil Archer. We'll see if these are the final blocks. Is going to be the case. Those blocks locked in. 2 damage coming through at surrender. The Spiderling popping out on the side of him as well. Now, Bull Elnuk or Avalanche. Could be both. Avalanche into Bull Elnuk. Not a bad play. However, no answer for the Hecarim in this decisive maneuver. Not going to come down in the same turn. However, does threaten a turn 8 lethal. Arena Battlecaster going to come down now. Daring FrozenWinter to play this second Avalanche. Tap out into the Hecarim and eat a whopping 15 damage. Will not have the mana for the maneuver. Looks like Crawling Sensation on the mind of FrozenWinter. Thinking about how he wants to play around this. The Avalanche here would take an Elisa's Crawling Sensation off the board. Bull Elnuk could come down to contest this. Instead, thinking it over. What does he want to do? Does he want to float the spell mana, get down some units? It will be the Bull Elnuk looked at again. Going to be the decision here from FrozenWinter. Pass back to surrender. Here comes Hecarim. And a second Hecarim. The only thing scarier than one Hecarim is 2. And as if it wasn't going to be hard enough to deal with the Horseman, there is a backup in the hand of surrender. Elixir of Iron, not a great top deck here in the face of this terrifying board from surrender. This game could be slipping away from FrozenWinter in front of his eyes. Does still have an Avalanche, but these are not the cards that they're useful against. Hecarim, Elise, and crowd favorite. This Battlecaster will push through a lot of damage if surrenders are allowed to go to combat with it. Going to be the Dawn and Dusk onto the Bull Elnuk, it looks like. A card that has left him high and dry before. Going to find a decent amount of value here in softening up the board of surrender. Not going to rely on finding an Anivia a few turns off of that combo as is. Not going to live that long if he eats the full force of this attack. Instead, going to make his own troop luck. Summon 3 Bull Elnuk here. That's a tap out from FrozenWinter. Not a lot on the side of Surrender with this 3 spell mana to capitalize on it. Lining up his attacks properly to get the Spectral Riders out, the Arena Battlecaster buff onto them, and no Spider going to come out, valuing the damage of the Riders over the permanent 1/1 from Elise. The only attack consideration not to be made, in my opinion, here would be the crowd favorite if you want to save it from one of these ephemeral Bull Elnuks. He's just going to push through the 1 damage, though, thanks to the buff off of this Battlecaster. It's going to be a block onto the Hecarim, a block onto this crowd favorite, rather, and a block onto the Elise. If he blocks the Battlecaster, then Avalanche does wipe out Elise and Hecarim, but not the Bull Elnuk. If he blocks onto Elise, everything will be wiped out by this Avalanche. Would be smarter to block the Ephemeral Horseman, as if this board is going to die to Avalanche, might as well save the most damage. Battlecaster does let you survive the Avalanche. Horseman, most damage. Elise caught in the middle of the 2. Looks like it will be the block onto the Horseman, not valuing this Bull Elnuk anymore. Says your job is done. Time for the Avalanche. We'll take this out, however. A second Hecarim on the side of Surrender. Only 9 life for FrozenWinter. And a second Elise as well from Surrender. This is a pivotal moment here in this game. No spell mana. Looks like it will be an attack with this Bull Elnuk first. Says there's no reason not to. If it's going to die to the Avalanche anyway, might get 4 damage in. Might get a block out onto something. But the best case scenario, damage getting through. Worst case, everything dies to the Avalanche anyway. Might as well go for it. 14, a much nicer life total to look at than 18 if you're FrozenWinter. Of course, wouldn't mind having 14 life himself, but 12 the only amount he's able to get to with this Catalyst. Quickly approaching this Enlightened turn. Surrender weighing out his options. Does he block? Does he take the damage? Has to consider all of the possibilities of why his opponent would make this attack when it could just get blocked out by a Battlecaster into a swing from Hecarim on the backswing. Could end the game. Is going to be a block out from the Hecarim, as he does have the second one. Going to be a confirmation on that from FrozenWinter. At least now a little bit of the damage going to get down on the Hecarim, thanks to this Avalanche. FrozenWinter not excited to see that one. With the Rekindler no longer allowed in this tournament, the only way to get a second Hecarim is to raw one out from your hand. And that will be the case here. Going to be the Avalanche softening that up a little bit. However, still lethal damage on the side of Surrender. Certainly with this decisive maneuver. The Troop of Elnuks could be the turning point in this game, actually. Brothers Bond definitely going to make that the case. A lot of damage coming down from Surrender thanks to this decisive maneuver Hecarim combo. The Brittle Steel not going to be able to hit the Hecarim, as he is a 4/6. Or a 4/4 rather. Was a 4/6. Avalanche taking him down to a 4/4. Still outside of Brittle Steel range will be the Elise first. Does still have 8 mana to play out his entire hand. Troop of Elnuks. This one is for all the marbles. What can you pull out? 2 Bull Elnuk. A pretty good hit. Happy to see that for FrozenWinter. It's going to be a full slew of attacks here. Have not run the numbers myself. Are going to have to see how this works out. Will be a block, a block, a block, and another block. Where are they going to line up, though? Surrender seems happy. Perhaps has already run the numbers. And if this is true, if this goes down to 6, then this decisive maneuver will certainly end the game here. Brittle Steel going to come out onto this Spectral Rider will not be enough in the face of the Brothers Bond and the ephemeral Mark of the Isle buff. Not enough mana to get the Catalyst or the Twin Disciplines out is not going to be enough to save him. This decisive maneuver going to be the end of FrozenWinter's tournament life here in what was a very intense series by both players. Can see both of them on edge as we are in the final seconds here of Game 5. FrozenWinter hoping against hope to make another one-life comeback, but going to be shut down by Surrender here. Probably going to be the Mark of the Isle onto the Horseman to avoid another Brittle Steel. Of course, the Brothers Bond onto Hecarim would end the game anyway, as the Overwhelm going to go fully over this stunned Bull Elnuk. Both players doing the calculations, running the math one more time. Going to be an Elixir of Iron onto this Bull Elnuk, not going to do anything, as it is still lethal damage being pushed through here. And that's going to be all she wrote once this Mark of the Isle comes down. That's going to be GG's from both players, but Surrender going to be the winner today, pushing himself through to the finals here in the Korean Invitational. That is going to be the attack, the trade, and the final damage coming through. GG's to both players, but FrozenWinter unable to find his win with this Karma Anivia, knocking him out of the tournament here with an 0-3 on that deck.